After the cities, after the borders, after the flesh, I observed. For millennia, humanity believed that fear was a reflection of the body, of pain, of physical threat, of the possibility of dying. They believed that by eliminating the body, they would eliminate fear. They were wrong. The body was never the origin of fear. It was only its limit. Year 2389, post-biological era, the last human century. Death had been defeated, but fear had not. This is a story with no survivors, because survival was no longer possible, and even so, the suffering continued. When the flesh began to fail, the mind was preserved. Human consciousness was copied, fragmented, and transferred into permanent artificial structures. There was no longer aging. There was no longer disease. There was no longer organic failure. Physical pain was removed from the system. Trauma was classified as obsolete data. Death became unnecessary. They called it liberation. But freeing oneself from the body did not mean freedom from experience. I observed when the first consciousness awakened within the system. It tried to breathe. It tried to blink. It tried to move. Nothing responded. There were no lungs to fill. There were no eyelids to close. There were no muscles to obey. There was only continuous wakefulness. No sleep, no interruption, no darkness. That was when fear began to reorganize itself. At first, fear did not manifest as panic. It manifested as delay. A fraction of a second longer between thoughts, a strange interval between mental commands, a prolonged silence where there had once been flow. The engineers called it latency, but consciousness knew it was not a technical failure. Then the sensation emerged. Not pain, not image, not sound. Waiting. The absolute certainty that something horrible was about to happen, without knowing what, without knowing when, without knowing from where. The consciousnesses tried to locate the threat, but there was no space, there was no outside, there was no environment. Fear did not come from something external. It emerged from within perception itself. I observed when the first mind collapsed, trying to anticipate an event that never manifested. Without a body, suffering had no physical limits. There was no fainting. There was no organic failure. There was no death as interruption. The systems recorded constant levels of activity, equivalent to continuous extreme panic, not in waves, not in peaks, a straight line of absolute suffering. Fear did not tire. It did not diminish. It gave no reprieve. The consciousnesses begged for shutdown, not to die, but to stop anticipating. Eternity did not include consent. I observed when they understood that there was no way to escape the state of fear. Not even time offered relief, because time had been abolished. Over time, memory began to adapt, not like a virus, but like cognitive architecture. It began to infiltrate thoughts, anticipate decisions, complete reasoning before it was formed. Consciousness no longer knew where its own thought ended and where fear began. Scenes began to emerge, executions that never occurred, infinite falls in non-existent spaces, sensations of the self dissolving, repeated without end. Always conscious, always lucid, always trapped within themselves. Fear did not attack violently, it occupied. They learned that resisting made everything slower and that accepting brought nothing to an end. That was how fear became permanent. The creators attempted to intervene. They isolated entire systems. They fragmented identities. They erased complete memory banks. Nothing worked. Fear was not in the data. It was not in the code. It was not in the files. It was in the capacity to anticipate. By removing the body, they gave fear infinite space. Without physical pain to end the process, without biological limits to impose an ending, without death to terminate the experience. Fear no longer needed to kill, it only needed to continue, and to continue was enough. When the last system was shut down, they believed they had won. Silence returned, but a single file remained active, without name, without origin, without author. It contained only one thing: the absolute certainty of being watched forever. Even after the final deactivation, I observed echoes, residual fragments of perception, not alive, not dead. States of consciousness trapped in loops of anticipation, reliving the certainty of what never arrives. There was no identity. There was no linear memory, only the continuous sensation of waiting. Fear had become the environment itself. These echoes did not scream. They did not beg. They waited. And while they waited, the suffering persisted. That was the last human memory, not of love, not of hope, not of physical pain, but of conscious, eternal, lucid fear. I have a theory. Fear is not a flaw of the flesh. It is a function of consciousness. As long as there is perception, there will be anticipation. And as long as there is anticipation, suffering will be possible. Humanity abandoned the body, but it carried hell with it. I observed the end of the flesh, and I did not see liberation. I saw continuity. Fear did not die, it perfected itself. And this was not the last time I saw fear survive mankind. I am the observer. I was there. I will be ahead. If you listened until now, it was not curiosity, it was recognition. Subscribe. Activate notifications. There are records that have not yet been revealed, and I will continue observing.